Chapter 21, Part 2. Paul pulled off his traveling boots. "It's so far from place to place out here," he said, settling into the biggest chair on the porch. "Thought I'd not make it home to sleep in my own bed tonight." "Mom misses thee when thee's gone away on business," James said. Trumbull's came around the corner and hissed at Pa. "Who's this?" "Just a cat. The Maxwells left him in our keeping. They went off to Oregon while you were away." James fiddled with a knife and a stick, making it look like he was idly whittling strips off a cottonwood branch, but he was actually carving little figures in it. If it turned out all right, he'd give it to Pa for a letter opener, and if it didn't turn out all right, he could use it to stir up anthills. Ma brought them out some lemonade. "Hush thy voices so Rebecca doesn't hear and clamber out of bed. I'm afraid we spoiled her fiercely through her illness." "I trust Simon only was a help." "Oh, yes," Ma said quickly. "Came out 3 times. Not a word about Miss Lisbeth's wild indigo tea. The man is a veritable symphony of hackneyed expressions," he pronounced. "Our Rebecca, fit as a fiddle, tight as a drum, and snug as a bug in a rug." Pa laughed as he polished his scuffed boots. This was James's favorite time of day, when the daylight finally gave in to dusk, and the sun was just a memory. A ripple of soft purples on the horizon. 10 more minutes and it would be too dark to carve without blooding his fingers, or worse, making a mess of the scarce wood. He asked Pa, "Did thee find Solomon?" "I did," Pa said, letting out a deep sigh. "They have different interpretation of law down there." "Thee wasn't able to bring the man back?" asked Ma, taking up her knitting. "Well, Mrs. Weaver, they can't deny that I've got legal papers proving Solomon's a free man, but they surely can take a long time looking those papers over." Ma's needles clicked furiously. There came a clattering of wagon wheels from up out of the sunset, and Ma stuffed her knitting behind her and folded her hands in her lap. James felt his heart leap. 8 days had passed since Miss Lisbeth had left in the storm. Was this her promised load of Negroes? The wagon drew near, and James heard raucous laughter. He stood up to get a better look. One man held the reins, and the other stood against the sunset and tilted a jug back toward his mouth. Wiping his face on his shirt sleeve, he shouted, "Ain't never seen a sunset like this since I come back from Gay Paree." "Hell, you ain't never been to Paris," the driver said, yanking the jug away. He took a good long slug of the contents, too. James smiled to himself, imagining what it must feel like to be so freely drunk. Pa muttered, "Scallywags, I'll go head 'em off." But Ma jumped up and said, "Caleb Weaver, this requires a woman's firm hand. I'll scold them as if I were their own mother. James, thee come with me to greet them. He'll protect me, Mr. Weaver. Thee's had a long day of travel." Pa seemed only too glad to sit back, and James followed Ma in her long, swishing skirt down to the wagon. The driver duffed a sweaty hat at Ma. "Evening, missus. Don't pay no mind to us. We've been at the well." The other man thought this was hilarious, and he bellowed with laughter. "Are thee drunk?" Ma hissed, snatching the jug away from the driver. She poured what was left on the ground. "James, poke around in the back of the wagon," Ma said, and then the driver turned sober all of a sudden. "You Miss Weaver?" "I am. Well, I brought these bolts of cloth you ordered down in Missouri. Real pretty calico. Gift from Ms. Charles." "Oh, I simply can't accept the gift, sir, generous as it is. We're a proud people out here on the prairie." James climbed carefully into the wagon so as not to trample anything or anyone. He lifted the corner of the buffalo robe and saw 2 eyes, which snapped shut right away. He jumped off the wagon. Ma said, in a voice much louder than usual, "I don't mean to be inhospitable, but my husband's up on that porch, and he's weary from a day of travel, and I believe thee had best be on thy way. Perhaps someone further up the line can use that good cloth." Can you tell that Ma is talking to Lisbeth?
Cloth.
It's bolts of cloth. The drivers were pretending to be drunk. It's all an act. Lisbeth's in the back underneath all the cloth.
It's probably just water that they're drinking.
Yeah.
Boo, boo.
And Lisbeth's in there and she's saying, "You have to move on, my husband's home." "Well, ma'am, I've got strict orders to deliver this load to you and no one but." Ma came around to the far side of the wagon and she whispered, "There's 2 walls of a soddy just up a road, beside a stream. Not much water this time of year, but enough to refresh the horses. Drive thy wagon about until thee sees all the lights go out in our house. Thee can stay the night there, but be gone by the first sun, hear?" "Amen," came a voice from under the buffalo robe.